good. I'm on somewhere. It's a lightning rod.
If everyone would like to cozy up under the overhang here, we can all stay dry.
Hey, Gary.
There's a little more room under the overhang if we can move back just a bit. Now, as you were walking here, hopefully everyone got a glimpse of the cottages and the gym over here in the distance. I figured it would be nice to be dry as we were doing this, so we tuck ourselves down here. The students, as we talked about initially, lived in a dorm building together where it was just that one facility. Over the years, though, the approach changed to build cottages. And this is something that was common in many different sorts of boarding schools. The idea was to create a family within the student population here. And there were many different cottages along the back. There was a gentleman named Ted Hull, who was a graduate of the School for the Blind, who went on to serve as a personal tutor to Stevie Wonder, who became a student for the school when he was about 12 years old. Stevie Wonder, of course, today we know as a musician. He was little Stevie Wonder when he started off. And Motown, in order to be able to send him around touring, still legally had to provide him with educational opportunities. And they were very eager, of course, to see him out on the road making money. So they arranged actually with Dr. Thompson to have a private tutor from the School of the Blind help him in his studies and travel with him. Now, was he a student here as well? Yes. In between his tours, he lived on campus like any other kid. And Ted actually wrote a book called The Wonder Years, which is something that you can purchase. I actually read through it myself, really enjoyed it. And one thing Ted talks about was that he loved to see Stevie come here, because instead of being the famous Stevie Wonder who was on stage every night, here he was just one of the kids. And he talked about how his whole persona changed when he would come here. He was just an ordinary kid. And he certainly benefited from the environment here as well. Ted told stories about the boys in his dorm who liked to stay up half the night playing card games. They had braille cards, they had large print cards. They would have checkerboards, for example, in the different dorms in the family area. The checkerboards were made with indentations for the different colors. So as you moved the pieces across, you could tell the red from the black. He also talked a lot about the groups that Stevie was a part of. Even Stevie Wonder, the musician, played in the school orchestra, sang in the choir. He became one of the students. And this idea of the students coming together, you know, sometimes students do other things too that aren't quite as sanctioned. You know, you might play Old Maid, you might play Crazy 8 one night, but you put enough kids together and you're gonna have, you know, some things just sort of happen. For example, in his book, Ted tells a story about some boys who at one point in time, up in the attic, had a still going. Now, he said, the way they did this, he said, was completely bizarre. He said they would keep a large vat of either lemonade or orange juice, whichever they could smuggle out of the cafeteria and get in a large enough amount. They would then, oh, there's one of them. The story in the book was that they would take grapes and they would actually allow the grapes to ferment in this liquid. He said the grapes would swell to the size of plums eventually. And he said it was the most gosh-awful stuff you have ever drank. But regardless, they still did it because, you know, those boys. It was also, of course, always a challenge to see if you could sneak off campus at night. And one gentleman that I spoke with, Michael, told a story about how some of the high school boys decided they were going to do this. Well, they managed to sneak out. What they didn't know was that the faculty was on to them. So So when they came back in the wee hours of the morning, one of them went to crawl into his bed, only to find one of the faculty members in it. There was also a large number of activities that were sanctioned activities that took place. As I was going through the yearbooks, I found comments about Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies. There was a dorm council, an abacus club, a travel club, student council, recreation council, campus news, as well as being a yearbook staff. There were the bell ringers, the pep band, the ski club, the journalism department, the Future Homemakers of America, the chemistry club, the radio club, the school senate, the music group called Bach to Rock, the tuning club, the choir, the band, and the orchestra. There are also many photos of different events taking place on campus. School dances that would be held, bowling parties, swimming parties. There was a pool that the students were welcome to use. They would go on senior trips, junior plays took place. And sometimes people from the community, would come in for the band concerts. They would come in to see the junior play. They had such a reputation, particularly with their music departments. This was something that attracted Lansing to come in to benefit from that, to enjoy that. As I was talking to Michael, and he made a joke about this, he said probably the thing that people think is the funniest is when we talk about the fact that they taught us to roller skate here. He said, everyone sort of goes, blind kids on roller skates? But
That's where we found our first girlfriends.
The roller skating would take place in the gym, which is just back over here at the other side of this building. And the story that he told was that there would be speakers set up in the corners. So as you would skate around and the noise would get louder, you would know to turn. Although I'm not surprised to hear you say that was how you got a girlfriend, because I have to imagine there was a lot of accidental bumping into one another.
You got the picture.
I gotta tell you something.
Yes, sir.
Before this gym was built in '64, there was a bowling alley up in the top of the school building, and there was a big rec room up there. But the main building here had a gym, where we were standing on the far side over there, also had a gymnasium in it. And there was, down in the basement, there was like a mat room for the wrestlers to practice on. And there was locker rooms in the basement of the main building here. And there was all kinds of stuff like that too. So before '64, we did actually all the gym stuff and roller skating over here in the old main building. Now, Larry, you remember that. The gym was a lot smaller than the one up the hill here.
It's funny because I can remember being in the gym when it was built.
Can you?
Yeah. And I remember when the 1963 wrestling championship, people were getting their pictures taken in that gym.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Now they're talking about tearing this complex down. I mean, I was here in 1959, so I seen all the building of all these new buildings.
And that's something else that was encouraged, was a lot of physical activity, both just for recreation, but also the students were given the opportunity to join sports teams. There was a state champion wrestling team at one point from the school in the early '60s. There were wrestling teams here, I believe, through the '70s. There was cheerleading for the girls. Some of the photos that we have up in the building where we started was, you will see a picture actually of one of the wrestling teams and of a cheerleading squad. Something else that was encouraged was track and field. In fact, you may not have realized it, but you walked past part of the track just a moment ago. The track team would compete both with local schools, is my understanding, and also as part of a conference of schools for the blind from across the Midwest. And this conference actually still exists today. It's the North Central Association of Schools for the Blind, is what it's called currently.
And we were the dynamite. We were actually the powerhouse.
Now, I've read that the association included schools from as far away as Nebraska, Kansas, as far south actually as Tennessee and Kentucky as well. And that there would be sports meets in a different state each year where all of the schools would come for big track and field meets.
When the coach took you down to the border, he'd always stop the cars and he'd say, Who's got their passport? It scares some of the new people.
Later on, they also had forensics,
Really?
and they had
Debate.
We had debate.
bowling, they would do it, and they do it at their own facility, but they would call it into whoever was overseeing it for that year. You'd have a bowling team here, then they'd call the scores in and they'd find out who plays.
Oh, interesting.
And they had swimming tournaments later on, after I was gone. When I was in school here, it was wrestling, cheerleading, and track and field wrestling and track and field for the boys and cheerleading for the girls.
Yeah, they were in there once.
That's basketball. You had to click on the back of the basket so you knew what it was. And you had to get your team.
Get
You
10
got
shots.
a point if you hit, you got 1 point if you hit the
Backboard.
rim, you got no, 1 if you hit the backboard, 2 if you hit the rim, and 3 if you got a basket, but you didn't get all six.
Interesting.
And you'd have a group of 5 on a team, and you'd take 10 turns, so they called it 10 shots.
When I first came to the school in '65, I know the tent shop, and I said, what's going on around here, it's so quiet? He said, you can't cheer because they have to hear the little beep.
I can tell you that the band did participate in regular MSBOA band festivals, and the director, Jack Chard, sat in the group and played with the group, and that's how he started the group,
Oh, interesting.
and then ended it by being in the group with the kids.
That's neat.
But they performed very well, always did well at
And
festivals.
the orchestra did too, participated in the district fest.
Oh, yeah.
They had the marching band for a while.
They went to New Jersey and marched in a big parade in New Jersey one summer too.
That was in the early 60s.
Yeah, that was in '60, and then we were in the Tulip Festival several times.
Oh, were you over in
Yeah.
Holland? That's a
Yeah.
long parade.
Can we ask for a show of hands of how many actually attended here?
Sure. Show of hands, how many of you were students here over the years? Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight.